सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुरेव परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। सच्चिदानन्दरूपाय विश्वोत्पत्त्यादिहेतवे तापत्रयविनाशाय श्रीकृष्णाय वयं नुमः। निगमकल्पतरोर्गलितं फलं शुकमुखादमृतद्रवसंयुतं पिबत भागवतं रसमालयम् मुहुरहो रसिका भुवि भावुकाः। जन्माद्यस्य यतोऽन्वयादितरतः चार्थेष्वभिज्ञस्वराट् तेने ब्रह्महृदाय आदिकवये मुह्यन्ति यत्सूरयः। तेजो वारिमृदां यथा विनिमयो यत्र त्रिसर्गो मृषा धाम्ना स्वेन सदा निरस्तकुहकं सत्यं परं धीमहि। धर्मः प्रोज्झितकैतवोऽत्र परमो निर्मत्सराणां सताम् वेद्यं वास्तवमत्र वस्तु शिवदं तापत्रयोन्मूलनम्। श्रीमद्भागवते महामुनिकृते किं वा परैरीश्वरः सद्यो हृद्यवरुध्यतेऽत्र कृतिभिः शुश्रूषुभिस्तक्षणात्। We are in the 5th canto, talking about Rishabhadev Ji in the 5th chapter of the 5th canto. So Rishabhadev Ji Maharaj gives a very powerful message to his children and all the people that he had invited in the Brahmavarta Sthana. Having given them the message, he asked his oldest son Bharata to take over the responsibilities of the kingdom, and then he performed the Rajyabhisheka, the coronation ceremony. Having done that, immediately, having given up the responsibility to his children, he immediately took to sannyasa. Now that 4th ashrama is something that is probably long forgotten in our system. The 4th ashram that we talk about is the sannyasa ashrama, and the sannyasa ashrama is something that probably happens by itself. Like when all the vasanas are cleared, you take to the sannyasa. Probably such ones are called Paramahamsa. And for those of us who are in search of that truth yet, nowhere close to that, but in search of it, aiming towards that. Even for them, the fourth ashrama makes much more sense, that once your responsibilities are done. Now, how do we define how the responsibilities are finished? When is it that my responsibilities are totally finished? As long as we are keeping ourselves involved, probably never. So the attitude with which we start the earlier three ashramas is in the direction of readiness to give up anything without feeling misery or pain, and when willing to give that up, when is the limit for saying that this is my responsibility done? As we see in all these great masters' cases from where we learn. Sannyasa, complete renunciation of things that we are still attached to, provided all those who are being supported by me are established well. Probably in today's world, it could be taken as provide a right environment for them to grow, let them stand on their own feet, and then get them settled. If they are ready for the marriage, get them settled, and then take to Vanaprastha and Sannyasa. This is what Raja Rishabhadeva teaches us. And what did he do? He completely changed himself. Now imagine, he was not some Tom, Dick and Harry who took to sannyasa. He was the king himself, who ruled the entire Jambu Dvipa. Imagine, when he takes to sannyasa, everybody knows him. When everybody knows you, living a life of sannyasa starts being meaningless. And I've practically seen that end. That's why I'm saying it. That when you know that there are people who know you, you feel that security. You are not in the security of that Supreme. And everybody would love to treat Raja Rishabhadeva in their own sense. So he completely changed himself. He had long jata. He had a lot of beard and unkempt. He had changed his clothes into some rags. And he maintained it that he would not stay in the same place for more than a couple of days. That's the best thing. What happens when you don't stay in a place for more than a couple of days? When you look back, there is nothing to look back. No attachments, no hangovers. In fact, for one thing, I should congratulate or appreciate what my father did. From kindergarten to 12th grade, I probably studied in 10, 11 schools across length and breadth of India. So when I look back, I don't have any buddies of that period. Not one single friend that I can think of or even remember. I can't even remember them. So probably that was being trained by the Supreme. Ye Baba, vairag seekh lo, we say. So he maintained it that he would not stay in any place more than a couple of days. And then, as he would be passing through different villages or different jungles and places unknown, fearlessly he would be walking. As he would be walking in through the villages, where people, probably mistaking the way he looked, thought that he was a madcap. Now, looking at a madcap in a village, kids teased him, probably the elderly generation even abused him, but not a word of reaction. He did not, pull up his sleeves and muzzle and say that, "Kisse panga le rahe ho?" Do you know who I am? I am Rishabhadeva. No. He just took it as a mute witness. He should have given back, stood up for himself. Stood up for what? Standing up for yourself is also the ego trying to stand up. Now at that level, when he has taken complete sannyasa, he doesn't care about standing up for himself. Whatever is the prarabdha, and I don't need to react to anything. Not any kind of reaction from him. His body had become so different because of constant exposure to the weather. He wouldn't care. He would be sitting under the sun, under the rain, sometimes under a tree, sometimes under a roof, never bothering to take care of his body. Whatever he got, whenever people offered, is what he used to eat. So he had gone thin and his whole body was looking so frail. In spite of all that, they say whenever such Mahatma travels or whenever he moves, wherever he is at that moment, that particular place starts getting its own charm, its own beauty. So wherever Rishabhadeva used to travel, wherever his feet used to touch the earth, the kind of poetry used here is that the earth would be inspired to present herself the best for Rishabhadeva. So the entire place would be charged with a different kind of energy. And then they say that though he was looking like a madcap, looking like a person who didn't have any normal sense of living, who was living like a worthless creature, but there was some glow which was there in his eyes behind the shabby form that he was carrying around. So much so that the description given is that women had to look back, there is something attractive about him. But nothing would affect Rishabhadeva ji. He would be mindless about all this and keep walking away. Without reacting, without taking care of anything that the ego would be feeding onto. Now that is the key here. What is the problem of our existence? Our search is for, quote unquote, all in capital letters, happiness. So each one of us could be called a scientist, experimenting with various kinds of things to find that happiness. We experiment with various kinds of things to find happiness. Some experiment with food, some experiment in the lab, some experiment. I was watching crazy home videos. There is this fellow who would tie himself with a stretchable band and then jump off. Various weird places. And there's other fellow who would try to climb like a lizard or Spider-Man. Climb a multi-storied building without any parachute or any kind of rope tied to him. He would just climb 100 stories, 150 stories. Different kinds of experiments in pursuit of that happiness. Experimenting with various things. forgetting that there is only one thing that is blocking us from having that happiness, which is our own ego. Our very own ego. Personalized, customized for ourselves. I like that word, customized. That which is so personalized that gives only kashta is customized. The ego is the barrier which is not allowing that nature which is your own of being happy to express itself. And as long as this ego keeps getting denser and denser, thicker and thicker, bloating, our attacks on ego, trying to annihilate it, would mean nothing. It's like taking a small little pin in a big pumpkin. It wouldn't even be seen. That would be kind of effort that we put against the ego. So the masters have found that this ego is constantly fed to become thicker, denser and bigger in size. It's constantly fed, and these feeders were observed. And what are these feeders? Organs of perception and action, mind, intellect. Through each one of these, we become the doer and the enjoyer. So in a nutshell, this doer and enjoyer, doership and enjoyership are the feeders constantly feeding the ego. As long as these are constantly feeding the ego, whatever sadhana we do, whatever kind of effort we put towards the Supreme, even that effort being put towards the Supreme has a hidden agenda. Why do I go to temple? To show everybody else that I am also spiritual. That is a hidden agenda. The ego wants to survive even through that path. Those who have come into this path renouncing everything, when you have renounced everything, there is no comparison, there is no competition, there is no conflict. 3 C's. There is no comparison, there is no competition, there is no conflict. Or there should be no conflict. But there seems to be conflict because even this path of renouncing becomes the feeder. I have renounced the entire world. So Rishabhadevaji took it so firm in his conviction that whatever happens to the body, mind and intellect, I shall not react to anything. There would be no reaction from me when anything happens to my body, mind or intellect. I am just something who is observing the body, mind and intellect, undergoing various kinds of modification, changes. Some places treated well, some places insulted, some places abused, some places kicked, pushed, stoned. Even such that as he was lying down somewhere unknown, it has been observed that he had acquired a lot of siddhis. That the place that he was living in was smelling fragrant. No, he was not using any cologne. Least of it. Just his mere presence of being there would be, for miles together, it would be smelling of that fragrance. But he did not care about using those siddhis also. He did not want to display anything at all. And the reason being, now once you start displaying, you may never know when the mind plays a trick and gets attached to these siddhis also. So he refused to recognize the presence of those siddhis. And thus he would be lying somewhere in the jungle, somewhere on the road, unmindful of what was happening around himself. This is like being nobody in this world. We are constantly being taught, be somebody. And here it is a reverse process, be nobody. And who is it that is trying to become somebody? It is the ego. Now here, make sure that when the Upanishads or the Puranas are saying, be nobody, it is not again some hard effort to become nobody. It is just a mere fact that I am not going to have any kind of response or reaction regarding my body, mind and intellect. The ego dies a natural death. Continuing this story in the 6th chapter, Parikshit Raja had a question. In the very beginning, he says, in the first and second shlokas, Mahatma ji, O Shukdev ji, isn't it true that those who are established in their own self, all these worldly things, including the siddhis, would never have any kind of influence on them? Then why is it that Sri Rishabhadev ji did not accept them, did not even care to look at those siddhis? Because it would never influence him. Then Shukdev ji says, Baba, who knows what happens to this mind at what time? He says, Lord Vishnu had taken the Mohini avatar when the Milky Ocean was being churned. And the only person in the entire universe who missed that occasion was Lord Shiva. Why? He was busy meditating. Why was he busy meditating? Because he had already taken the poison. So he had to fight with that poison within. So he was busy meditating. And rest of the gods and even his wife had seen Mohini avatar. And everybody described so great about Mohini. So Lord Shiva goes to Vishnu. Sun rahe Vishnu? The other day you had taken some Mohini avatar. Show it once. And Vishnu said, no way. What do the kids say here? No way, Jose. No way, I'm going to show you that. After a lot of pleading, after a lot of prayers, finally Vishnu agreed to show his Mohini avatar, the other side of the color. So as soon as he showed, Lord Shiva was so tempted. When Lord Shiva himself, his mind, who is always absorbed in meditation, had for a fraction of a moment the mind fluctuate, looking at Mohini avatar. What is a simple human being? So better be aware of this instrument called mind. It is worse than your worst enemies. Because on the forefront it has, or let me put it, the front end. The front end is looking very friendly, but the back end is completely messed up. The only purpose for it is why it is befriending you is to put you aside. Take you tangential to the path that you have taken. That is its purpose. So Rishabhadev ji did not even recognize these siddhis that he was having. So what did he do? He had constantly kept moving from one place to the other, one place to the other. He was never in one single place. They say that he had gone to Konka, Venka, Kutaka, and these are all the other places. Probably Konka is the place wherein it is Konkan. Goa, Mangalore, in that area, Konkan. And those places were called earlier. So he had travelled on foot all these places. And once when he was travelling or walking through this particular jungle in Kutaka Desha, in Kutakachala, in the forest there, he entered. And as he was going through that forest, the forest caught fire because of rupture, because of don't know what reason. It got fire and his body got burnt. I heard a great Mahatma Ji say that he didn't even care for a ceremony. Normally when the sannyasis die, either there is a big samadhi sthala or a great lineage or a tradition that would follow. He didn't care for anything. He was so established in his own self, unmindful of anything. He withdrew himself so well that his body perished in that forest fire. Now here, this is the story of our Raja. In the end, Shukadev ji talks about something so beautiful but so different that has been never spoken in any other Shastra. He says that all great people, even though established in the Supreme Self, having gone beyond the ego, having controlled the ego, not controlled, having removed, annihilated the ego, still would crave for one thing. It is very strange. There should be somebody to crave it, right? That which is craving for itself is gone. What would they crave and how can they crave? So Shukdev ji says that they would love to have bhakti towards their Ishtadeva. And the reason that they say is, Lord doesn't mind giving moksha to everybody. But bhakti and swatmarupa sakshatkara is only to a rare few people that he blesses. And the example given was so outstanding here that I had to mention it. He says, a king, when in a good mood or a good occasion, does not mind releasing the prisoners. It's a job. Mukti. You are liberated from this jail. But though he sends them away, he would not allow these people to get into his personal chambers. Would he? The king doesn't mind allowing them to go away, but would definitely mind allowing them to come into his personal chambers. So mukti is releasing from the jail. But being in that joy of ananda of the Dvaita, wherein you are enjoying the form of the Lord, the services to the Lord, is like being close to Him, upasana. That can happen only if He has His grace extremely showering on you. So he says to Parikshit that, O Parikshit, along with this jnana, fill your heart with that bhakti. And thus saying, Shukadev ji prostrates mentally to Rishabhadev Maharaj in remembering Rishabhadev ji and his great charitra. Because even Shukadev ji Maharaj is of the same kind of lineage wherein he doesn't care about the world. He is in his own joy. So seeing one such great master earlier, he prostrates to him mentally. And then he continues with the rest of the story. In the 7th chapter, Shukadev ji starts talking about the next king in line. after having been installed by Rishabhadeva, King Bharata took care of his people and in due course of time got married to this great pious lady called Panchajani. And through her he gave birth to 5 sons: Sumati, Rashtrabhrata, Sudarshana, Avarana, Dhumraketu. And this whole subcontinent was named after him as Bharata Varsha. It is that great Bharata and his Charitra being discussed through this 7th chapter, which starts in the 7th chapter. So this Raja Bharata, who was very pious from within, who would regularly perform, or his day would start with constant meditation on the Lord, japa of the Lord, performance of the Agnihotra, and then he would do the upasana of the Lord within his own heart. In the lotus of his heart, he would imagine the Lord and he would imagine the whole Vishwarupa. This is not Vishwarupa. He would imagine the whole Vishwarupa of the Lord with all different various forms and different devatas all in one form. And even all gods were very happy with his meditation, and his bhakti was increasing day by day. Now such Raja Bharata, what did he do? As his intensity for the Lord increased day by day, he called his sons. See, he ruled, he had his sons born, he tutored them, educated them, and then when they were of the age that they could take responsibilities, gave up the responsibilities, did not find any charm in holding a certain position or name and fame. He gave it up. And then what did he do? After giving up all that, with complete nishkama bhava, he took to the sannyas ashrama. He went to a certain place called Pulahashrama. This Pulahashrama is today called Kathmandu. It is near the banks of Gandaki river. Now Gandaki river is place wherein you even today get these black little stones of various sizes, which is called the Shalagrama. The Shalagramas are of a specific nature. When you pick the Shalagrama and you look inside, Shala or Shali means the spider. So it is a belief that the spider makes its web and lives inside this particular stone. It's normally parted in between. And when you look at that stone, on either sides there is Shankha and Chakra. Normally Shankha Chakra is treated as the form of Lord Narayana. The biggest Shalagrama that is there today is in Badrik Ashram, in Badrinath temple, which is of probably 2.5-3 feet size. And the form of Narayana there is so amazing. Probably that is the only place that you find Narayana in Yoga Mudra. He has 4 hands, that Shalagrama, which is not human carved. It is not carved by any human being. That was how it was found in the nature. So he has 2 hands with Shankha and Chakra, and the 2 hands placed in his lap, and Unmila Netra. Unmila Netra, the eyes have withdrawn. It is in Yoga Mudra. And that is how that Shaligram, biggest Shaligram is. So these Shaligrams are of a great specific value for all the Vaishnava, wherein they bring this stone from Gandaki river and worship it as Lord Narayana itself. As Lord Shiva is worshipped through Shivalinga, Lord Narayana is worshipped through Shalagrama. So around that particular place, he found a beautiful place, settled down, a small little hut, and every day he would wake up early in the morning, go into the Gandaki river, bathe in, stand there and perform the Surya Upasana. See, when you offer in Sandhya Vandana, when you offer the Arghya to the Lord, you have to offer the Arghya before the sun rises. So he would wake up way early in the morning, go there, bathe himself, offer his Sandhya Vandana, Arghya, and then he would every day chant this particular mantra, Paro Rajas Savitur Jata Vedaha Devasya Bhargo Manasetam Jajana. He would worship that supreme power reflecting through this sun, because of whom everything seems to survive, everything seems to be enlivened, everything seems to have a motion, a movement. Such Lord Sun is worshipped by our Bharata Maharaj, and he was so much into penance that they say that he had so much of jata and beard and everything, and every now and then he would go inside. Because of his tapasya, he would do the japa in the Gandaki Nadi itself. Now Gandaki Nadi, let me tell you, is not a warm watered source. It's pretty cold. And he would be shivering inside, sitting there, meditating upon the Lord. And the description given here is, probably his skin was looking of a different texture because of that constantly being in waters. Even such Bharata Maharaj had a strange twist in his life. What happened to such a great tapasvi who had left his wife, his children, his palace, all the wealth, name, fame, everything, and left to a unknown corner of the world, settled there, and nothing but constant upasana was the only thing that he was involved in, engaged in. Even to such Bharata. Now why is this story that important? For somebody who is so consistently, single-pointedly on track, one weird little thing somewhere can distract you, throw you off the path, unknowingly. Never know when, you never know how. So that is described in this 8th chapter. Here Shukadev ji again starts. He says that Raja Bharata would be sitting almost his entire day on the Nadi Tira, the banks of the river Gandaki. Brahmaksharam abhigrunanaha. Brahmaksharam, with the Omkara, he would be constantly chanting. Along with his pranayama of the breath, he would be immersed in chanting of the Omkara. Now one day, as he had taken a bath, sat down on the shores and was meditating on the Omkara, he suddenly was disturbed by a tiger roaring. He was only disturbed, not afraid. Believe me, when a tiger roars very close to you, it can really startle you out. So this king who got distracted, he opened his eyes and saw that on the other side of the bank, there was this deer which was probably pregnant, and you could obviously see that she was struggling to even drink water. Such deer was being chased by a tiger. Survival of the fittest. So that was the weakest among the herd, and the tiger spotted it and said, buy one get one free policy. That is what is in tiger's market, buy one get one free policy. So it chased this deer. Out of fear, it leaped from the shores, that side of the shore, it leaped. In its struggle, in its effort to leap, the baby fell down into the banks. It did get across to the other side of the river, but as it landed, because of the pain, it fell down dead. Now Raja Bharata was watching all this. The tiger gave up the chase because the baby was going away in the water, no point chasing it, and this was something which was dead, which didn't care about. Gave up the chase and went away. Now Raja Bharata looked at that baby deer. I said, sitting here, it would be inhuman of me to let that poor thing die. So immediately, all that he was wearing probably was a lion cloth. All that he had to prepare himself was tie down his jata so that he could swim well. So he prepared himself, jumped into the river, caught hold of that baby deer, brought it aside, and he had a lot of sympathy for that baby deer. Because the way it was born, the cruel environment that it was born in, he had a lot of soft corner developed for that particular deer. See, having a soft corner for the deer is not wrong, but he started getting attached to that deer. So much that he would not let the deer out of the ashram. So far it was only one small kutia. Now that small kutia had a fence. Because, you know, these foxes and jackal and this mountain lions, and this poor fellow cannot fend for itself. Let me create a fence so that it can be protected, it can be saved. And whenever he would go to pluck flowers and get different things for his aradhana and puja, he would take this deer along with himself. Sometimes looking at the track which was not that good, see, these deers are well acquainted and they are accustomed to walk in such kind of an environment. It is only human beings are not acquainted. But he would feel sad for the deer, that baby deer, and pick it up on his shoulders and go pluck flowers. And then he would not allow that deer to go outside for the fear of its death. So he would personally go out, pluck the tender of the tenderest grass, the most sweetest of the grass. In fact, it is described he used to taste it. Will my little deer like it? Yeah, once you look at it from a different perspective, you could say, "Cho sweet." You know, taking care of the deer. He was really a good man. No, he was really a good man, but not the best of the men. Because he did not understand the nature of these animals. And the description as you give it is pretty hilarious. As he would be sitting for his sadhana, he would ask the deer to sit and say, "Observe me doing Sandhya Vandana, you will also learn." And then he would make that deer sit with him. While he was eating, he would let the deer share from his own plate. So much of fondling with that deer that he did not imagine himself spending even a moment without that deer. Probably it is with a little spelling change, that is why they are called deer. Looking at what Raja Bharata had. One fine day, when the deer had become big enough, saw a herd of these deers coming by, and along with that group, this deer left the ashram. strange enough that there was such a suffering in the heart of Raja Bharata. Sometimes he was shocked, sometimes he was amused, sometimes he was crying. Shocked because he had so much of care and love for that deer. Now he would imagine, like how typically they would show in movies, especially Bollywood movies, that when you are walking, you imagine that person or thing that you are in love with, that comes somewhere there, you run up to it and you see that it is not there. That is what happened to Bharata, wherein the description is given here. And he was feeling miserable missing that deer. And he was shocked at himself because he was the one who had given up his wife, his children, his family, his entire kingdom, name and fame, and he did not feel anything at that time. And strange that he started feeling this strange kind of pain because of a deer. And as his pain for this, or the pangs of separation for this deer increased, it is in this thought of the deer that he left his body. He died. Ante Kalevaram. He left his body. So what happened then? In the next life, he was born as a deer himself. Few important points to note here. His petting an animal, getting close to an animal, is a good gesture, well appreciated. But the service that he was doing to the deer, if he had done with the upasana bhava of serving the Supreme himself, probably he would have never been attached. But since he got attached to the form, he got attached to the security that he thought he was providing to the deer, and he got so caught up in his own security that he was providing for the deer, that the last thought that he maintained before death was of the deer. So that last thought is the form that you take in the next birth. That doesn't mean that your other tendencies are gone. It will take a while for it to express in a different body. Now imagine, people have weird kinds of pets. I can understand dog, cat, horses, pony. People have python. I had gone to a house to stay there for 3 days, and on the first day night, the son was so excited, he said, "Swamiji, let me show you my pet." That was in that son's bedroom. It was like 8-9 foot long in a glass case. And he would be the one who would feed meat and everything to that. Nobody else in the house is non-vegetarian. Only the python is the non-vegetarian. He feeds the python. He fondles it, touches it. कभी glass was तोड़ के बाहर आ गया तो? And that kid was what? In 6th or 7th grade. Weird pet, python. And that was also not a very common color that you look at it. Pale, yellowish, white checks. Slimy creature. I have seen people, I don't know why I get to such houses. Yeah, my prarabdha. In having the darshan of this special animal devatas. I had gone into a house wherein they didn't call it lizard. Gecko? Gecko. Different kinds of geckos in their house. Strange. See, all these different things that you keep carrying, whatever you are attached to, in the last moment of your leaving this body, if that becomes the thought, the immediate next life, you are also a gecko. Then you would also be on TV. Talking to gecko can save you a bunch of money. In a weird British accent. Or you would be a dog or a cat as per the attachment. And there is another important point that I heard a great master say was, when you are dying, we all must, right? Never carry any impression strong enough about anything, anybody in this world. The negative tendencies are more stronger than the positive tendencies. So if you have negative vibrations about somebody, imagine when you die thinking of that other person. You are born in the same environment which you did not like in this life, as with the same tendencies in the next life. So much so that there is another beautiful thing that is said here. All those of us who are men now must have been women in our last life. All those of us who are women now must have been men in our last life. You know the reason why, right? Because of that specific interest. Because we are so attached. So that is what happened to Raja Bharata, that he was born as a deer. And it is said that because of his tivra abhyasa, tivra sadhana that he had done, he had not forgotten his earlier life's experiences. He remembered exactly the reason why he had become a deer. So he stayed away from all the other deers, just out of the concern that he may get attached to something. He did not want to get close to anybody, anything, anywhere. He was the sannyasa deer, which would not interact with anything. And soon, somewhere around that Pulastya ashram, this deer was born and then died also. And it is said, after having, this continues in the 9th chapter, after having left the deer's body, Raja Bharata was born to a Brahmin family with the Angira Gotra. And that family was pretty orthodox, pretty disciplined, nicely cultured family. This Brahmin had 2 wives. With the first wife, he had 9 sons, and with the younger one, he had 1 daughter and 1 son. And this son was the one who was Bharata and the deer, and was now the son of this Brahmin. He was also named Bharata. Coincidence maybe? Or he came with the name tag? He called me Bharata. So he was called Bharata. And he remembered when he was Bharata. He remembered when he was attached to the deer, and because of the attachment he had become the deer, and now he was in this form of Bharata. So what would he do? He was sent to school and education. He did not learn a single thing in the school. Not one single thing that he learned. Even the Sandhya Vandana done and Gayatri Mantra explained to him, he could not say the Gayatri Mantra, simple 3 lines, properly. The father thought, poor fellow is going to stay illiterate, had lot of concern for him, used to provide for him lot of love and concern. The other sons did not mind it because this fellow was considered dumb. Because he could learn nothing, play nothing, good at nothing. Probably you could not even call him as good for nothing. Because if nothing is something, he should be good at that also, right? He was not good at that also. So he got a nickname. See, instead of calling him Bharata, people started calling him Jada Bharata. Jada Bharata, inert Bharata. Jada, who is inert, who is dense, who is dumb. So Jada Bharata can be translated as dumb Bharata. Yeah, there is a sandhi. Dumb plus Bharata, that ba can so it becomes dumb Bharata. Jada Bharata. Now, every single day, his father tried different methods to try to reach out to this son. Physically, he would look so agile, so healthy, but he would not react to anything. It is something like, when there is an accident, you catch a witness that this happened in India, in the place that I was living. And in that accident, there were these 2 rival groups that had a headlong collision, and a poor fellow who was caught as a witness thought that if I say anything, if I say right, that side will kill me. If I say wrong, this side will kill me. So he was taken to the witness thing, and he was asked these questions. Hey, did you see? And tell us what happened. He said, huh? So finally, they thought that this fellow cannot speak. And he would keep looking at people and making weird sounds. So they thought he could not even hear. They finally let him go. He said, he cannot be our witness. And then outside he thought, thank goodness, I got out of it safe. See, if you do not allow anything through your ears, eyes, nose, tongue, smell, touch, anything to get inside, nothing can disturb you. See, normally the kind of filtering process that is taught as sadhana is once it gets inside, filter out everything, take only that which is required. That is called viveka. This Jada Bharata got into a different level of viveka wherein he said, na rahegi baas, na bajegi bansuri. If there is a cause, there will be an effect. The cause is this data which goes inside and corrupts my mind. So I will not let any kind of data get inside me. I don't care what it is. Whether it is education, whether it is samskara, vikara, nothing. He did not allow anything to get inside him. Mooka badiravat. Trying hard, poor fellow, his father passed away. Now these 9 brothers, see, once you get married, even an extra person seems to be a burden, a liability. So all these 9 brothers started shifting him. You go and stay with him for next 2 months. And that fellow said, no, we are leaving for some other place. You can stay only 15 days. You continue with the next brother. He said, okay. Food milega na? All that I care for is good food and I'm happy with it. Not that he mind, because he was such a useless person from their perspective, from the brothers' perspective, that they would give him all this food that was burnt, or normally when you do the first roti, it is not that great because of various reasons, parameters. So all such kind of burnt out food and that which was not tasting good would be spared for him. So he didn't complain. He said, as long as something goes inside this body service, I am happy. Okay, you are done. Okay, I'll go to the next brother. Where is the direction? Take left, then right, then go straight, then left, then right. I said, too much. Can you drop me there? And they would gladly go drop him off. Because he would be of no use at all. Finally, these 9 brothers thought, let us employ him in our own fields. At least there, he would be of some help. And he would do all things that would be like rivers. For the water to flow from the source to the field, it has to be on the upper thing and it has to taper down towards the field so that the water can easily flow. He reversed the whole thing. From the source, the field, the path was upside down. He would do always this upside down things. If he had to sow the seeds, he would first sow the seeds and then till the land. So ulta pulta, they got so frustrated with him. They were almost about to kick him out of their family. So what happened? One day when he was returning back from the field, there was this bunch of dacoits, saw that this is a healthy man, let us abduct him. So that they could offer it to Bhairavi Mata. So that they could offer him as a human sacrifice. So they cleaned him, scrubbed him, because they say that because he would not take care of his body, it took a while for them to scrub his body. His Yajnopavita became black in color. And that is how unkempt he was. So they scrubbed him and he got a good spa treatment. And he didn't mind it. You see, he didn't want to do it himself. If anybody did it, he accepted it. And they gave him good dress, nice perfume, nice pushpamala, decorated him well, a royal treatment with an umbrella on his head. They took him to Bhairavi Mata to be sacrificed. They said, put your head there. Said, okay. It is not that comfortable. Can I take your towel? Put it there and put his head. Knowing very well that they are going to sacrifice him. He didn't mind. Hona hai to hoega. He did not resist, he did not react. As is the case that he was not to be offered then. So Bhairavi Mata herself comes protecting him and killing away all these dacoits. Now he says, what to do now? So far what has happened was never planned by me. It used to happen, I was just walking. So he just waited there. He said, whatever has to happen will happen. I'll wait here for next thing to happen in my life. So as he was waiting for the next thing to happen in his life, it is said that there was a king called Rahugana. Rahugana, who was Sindha Sauvir kingdom's king, who was going to Sri Kapil Dev Ji to have his satsang with him. You know, in those days there was this palanquins. The palki kehte hai na? The palanquins, which were carried by 4 people. So when they carry the palanquin, there has to be a certain rhythm in carrying it. They have to have almost the same height, same weight, same pace, and same rhythm that they have to go in. If one fellow goes right, left, and the second fellow goes left, right, it will be a kachak, pachak, kachak, pachak, kachak, pachak. So they had to, that was an art to carry a palanquin. One of them, while going towards the satsang, fell sick. And these people were in search of a nice able-bodied person. And they found this fellow. And said, hey, I said, thank you. Thank you for creating my next program, my next itinerary. And he said, what next? He says, you are healthy enough to be in the forefront carrying most of the burden, but since you are new, go at the back and carry. This is a Raja, we are taking him to a satsang. They put the palanquin on him, and everybody were walking in one rhythm. He was walking in his own rhythm. Completely in his own rhythm. And the king from outside said, Beokufo, pata nahi kisko le ja rahe ho? You are taking the king, and this is how you take? And they were so afraid. They said, oh king, it is not our fault. The dosha is of this new person who seems to not learn things quickly. And he looked from his palanquin. He was looking healthy. He was looking well built. I said, oh, you are somebody who is very weak. And he started pulling his leg, taunting him, abusing this person. Right, sitting in the palanquin while he was still taking it. Don't you know who I am? I am the king. I can skin you alive if you don't do a good job. He was threatening him, and there was no effect on Jadabharata. Probably it was like Charlie Brown reasoning. What was he hearing? Wah, 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 wah. He didn't get any message. He was still going at his own pace. He said, stop! He got down and he kicked Jadabharata. As he kicked Jadabharata, those dacoits had cleaned his body and the Yajnopavita. So he saw the Yajnopavita. And he said, uh-oh, I kicked a Brahmin? And, Rahugana was a little shocked. And he says, maaf karna bhaiya, hum teen log se sambhal lenge. You go. But to be good for somebody, at least do something. Why are you, burden on this earth? So far, this Brahmana Jadabharata was keeping quiet. His whole lifetime he had kept quiet. So far. And the first time the right opportune moment comes, and the wisdom flows out. I was hearing a great master on this particular chapter. I had met him in Vrindavan. So he says, nothing happens as an accident in this world, in this universe. That Jadabharata who refused to speak, who refused to interact with anybody or anything in this world, suddenly started speaking to Rahugana, must have been an earlier life contact, some attachment. So this Rahugana was the deer that Bharata had saved. That was just a physical saving. And here was the actual saving part which he had discontinued then. He continued because of that sense of attachment. The right environment was created, and then he spoke out. He says to this Raja, you said that, I have to carry the burden and I have to be in the rhythm, I have to take this there, I have to do this. I said, so far who has been carrying is not me. The king is like, is confused. I said, I saw you carrying. I said, that's not me. There was some kind of weight put on this body. And the body was expected to carry it. I was watching it. Like, like a bystander looking at something happening. I said, I was watching it happen. So he says, I was watching it. Some weight was put on this body and the body was dragged into this job. But as far as I am concerned, I have got nothing to do with carrying your palanquin. In fact, when you talk of this body, sthaulyam karshyam vyadhaya adhayascha, the fatness, the thinness, the healthiness or the disease, the hunger, the thirst, the birth and death is only of this body. In fact, my earlier experience, they wanted to sacrifice this body and I was ready. But this body's prarabdha seemed to have an extension. And Lord himself came granting the extension. Jao, aur thode saal jiyo. So it is the prarabdha of the body. I have got nothing to do with this body. And now you say that you are the king, you are the Swami, and those who are carrying you are sevaka. Neither you are a king nor I am a sevaka. And if you talk from the physical aspect, probably we all must have been in a palanquin and you also must have been a palanquin bearer. Sometime in the past, in different lives. But if you talk from my standpoint, neither you are a king nor I am somebody who is a servant to you. You can only command. You can command being a king to that which you consider as your servant. But presently that which you are considering as a servant is where I reside, is where I am right now. But I have got nothing to do to that place where I am residing. And this king, strange but true, what he says is, Mahatma ji. Suddenly you talk of a philosophical stretch, you become a Mahatma. Just because you talk. And what does this Rahugana say? He says, आपने जो कुछ बोला बहुत अच्छा था पर कुछ समझ में नहीं आया पर आप महात्मा हो. You are a great Mahatma. But whatever you just said is so confusing, it's so much stuff said, I am not able to grasp it. He says, the thing that I got confused in your thing, what you are trying to explain, you say that you are not the body, but you are saying it with the body. It is your body that is speaking. You say that this body or this relation of a king and a servant and everything is mithya. But from its own perspective, even being a king and being a servant is real in its own nature. How can you call that as unreal? How can you call that something which is like swapnavat, something like a dream? Rahugana speaks as though he was going to satsang. Probably he was a professional satsangi. You know who is a professional satsangi, right? I termed this, I think it was in my third lecture itself, I got this term. See, it was way back 13, 14 years ago. I was searching for a venue to speak when I reached Vijayawada in Andhra Pradesh. And there was this place called Geeta Ashram. And the entrance, there was a huge chariot. As an arch, on that arch there was this huge chariot wherein Lord Krishna was there and Arjuna was there. And so I went inside, there was a big Bhagavad Gita book and they were all chanting. Though I couldn't stand the chanting part, but they were all chanting. So I said, I want to meet the person who runs this place. He said, you are speaking to him. So I said, we want to organize a talk. And what kind of talk? I said, Bhagavad Gita, lectures on Bhagavad Gita. So how many days would be the talk? I said, for how many ever days you want to give this place? Because Bhagavad Gita is 700 slokas. My aim was not to complete just one chapter and walk out. I said, all 700 slokas, how much ever time it takes. I said, then he asked me, which was probably a genuine question even today, who is the speaker? I looked at him and said, hum hai? Imagine, you have to imagine 13 years younger, fresh out of the ashram. So he looked at me. I still remember that look of his. And the answer that he gave, बड़े बड़े महात्मा आए यहाँ बोलने के लिए, तुम भी आओ बोल लो. Great people have come over here and have spoken. Our audience is pretty knowledgeable one. So you can also come and talk. That was like a temple. In front of it there was a little altar kind of a thing where the speaker would sit. And people would come according to the number of pillars vacant. That is called Pillar Vedanta. And they were actually Prahlada, in other terms. Because Prahlada had a darshan of Narayana through the pillar. So they were also in anticipation sitting closely to the pillar. So the actual reason was their back rest and they would listen as long as there is a pillar. And the day there is no pillar, they have come little late and it is occupied, they would go back saying, आज हमारा सुनने का पुण्य नहीं है. And the kind of questions that they throw. I have been asking all Mahatmas who have come here. But nobody has given me a right answer. How do you know if it is right or wrong? If you know that it is right or wrong, you better know what is the answer. So, but they are in so much love with their question, with their ignorance, they don't want to give it up. In fact, they want to decorate it on a golden platter as something that is elegant. My ignorance. चलो तुम भी ट्राई कर लो. Try answering me. So Rahugana was like that. Professional satsangi. He was going to Kapil Devji's satsanga. And he says, this I feel real. If somebody touches me, hits me, pinches me, I know it is real. I feel heat and cold, it is real. How can you say it is not real? Probably he had lost, Rahugana had very little patience. He says, Ako vidaha ko vida vada vadan. He says, Ako vidaha, a completely dumb idiot. Ako vidaha. A dumb idiot. Speaking as though the wisdom of ages is only in that particular brain. He just smashes that Rahugana with a hammer. Chup! You think you are wise? Why is it that you are mixing two different standpoints? He says, you do not have the right to mix two standpoints. Each one seems to be real from their standpoint. That is why it is called upadhi. What is upadhi? Upa, closest. Adhi, that which is, that which can be taken, that which can be accommodated. That is upadhi. So whatever is the environment in that upadhi, whatever are the qualities of that instrument, I start accommodating those qualities. Like if you place a kettle on the fire, First the kettle gets hot, then transmits that to the milk or water or whatever is there inside. But in fact it is not the quality of the kettle or water or milk to be hot. It is the quality of that instrument by being close to which you get or accommodate those qualities in you. So you are the one who are accommodating these qualities of body, mind and intellect to express out. You are that ego. As long as that ego seems to be real, yes, what you said of the king and the servant and the orders and the following of the orders seems to be real. But from the standpoint that I am talking to you, you are neither a king, I am not your servant. You can de-skin, you can do whatever. But that is just to this body which is an instrument. If there is a samskara, there is a fear of losing the samskara. If there is a vikara, there is a fear of changing that vikara. Like somebody, a lady goes to Gurudev with a complaint. Swamiji, my husband has been coming to your satsangs. He is in fact one of your main sevaks. He has been coming to satsangs for almost 17-18 years. But I have seen no change in him at all. Then Gurudev said, I don't mind accepting a thanks. She was like, what? Why should I thank you? He has not changed. I said, you have to thank me that he could have become worst. But he has at least stayed there, not changing. For that you have to thank me. Gurudev had his own style of speaking. You could start with saying thanks. So if there is a upadhi carries samskara or vikara, and then we are constantly working on changing this vikara to samskara and protecting the samskara. But the moment you know that you are not the upadhi, neither there is a fear for samskara nor for vikara. O Rahugana, you are still talking about the upadhi. It is like a prism put on anything. Whatever is the surface that it is put on, the quality, the color of that particular thing that it is placed on, it starts reflecting. And just because it is reflecting, it does not mean it carries those qualities. And the other example that is given here, you can imagine what kind of science must have been then. He says, light going through the prism, you get different colors. The different colors, the differences are real. The light on this side is also real. Now, which side of the prism are you? Are you on the other side wherein you see these different colors? Are you on this side where you see only one light? From my standpoint, O Rahugana, I see that one unifying thing which is enlivening this prism-like structure through which there are different colors coming out. But I am neither the prism, not the color, I am that supreme light. This is just an instrument for which you are getting attached to. And then he says, this Rahugana must have had one amount of satsang, I tell you. You say you are educated. But what good is your education when it cannot relieve you of your pains, miseries, cannot promise you happiness? Because he says, There can be somebody who has read through Bhagavata, read through Bhagavad Gita, read through Upanishads. A simple little thing happens and we are disturbed. Because we have just gone through these things, but we have not allowed them or allowed ourselves to reflect on it, think about it deeply and start putting it into action. Or else, those of us who call that we are educated, if you are really educated in the right direction, does your education promise you relief from pain and misery? Does your education promise you a permanent source of happiness? That is called education, and which you can get only from a guru. He says, Guroho hares charana upasanasraha jahi vyalikam swayam atma mosham. This is in the 11th chapter, 17th sloka. He says, you should have the same kind of bhava, Ishvaraha Guruhu Atma, all as one supreme self. When you start being with a guru with that kind of service attitude, wherein you see that supreme and serve that guru to know that supreme, that is the right knowledge to educate yourself, which promises you both relief from pain as well as a blissful state which is your zone. Rahugana is like, Maharaj, you are Paramatma, Paramananda Swarupa. I tell you, the reason that I am laughing, still Rahugana has no clue what he has spoken. But the way he is treating him, just because he has started speaking about Vedanta, he has already become Mahatma in the last chapter. Now he is Paramatma, Paramananda Swarupa, Karana Vigrahaya Namo Namaha. You are born for only one purpose of educating me, and I am so blessed to have you. Now that I have you, can you simplify your words that you said in your last chapter? It was very potent, but not an ounce of it got through me. Can you simplify it for people like me? Rahugana's approach. Probably Jada Bharata said, "Theek hai. I'll simplify it further for you." And then he starts from the 4th or 5th shloka. That we'll see tomorrow. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.